Welcome in the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast, kind of the Five off the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, FIVreasonsports.com for all of our podcasts and our companion content, of course. That includes a direct feed to our YouTube channel, all of our stories, our columns, our merchandise. We've got sales going on there. Everybody wants the Tua shirt, and I can tell you by the time that this posts, you probably still have time to get it by the draft, and if they do draft him, you're certainly going to want to have one of those. So check that out, and we've got about 11 Heat shirts on the site. We have 11 Heat shirts on the site, so definitely look at those. And like I said, we've got more free draft content than anybody else. I guarantee you that. On our website. I want to tell you about one of the great new sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. As I've said, our sponsors are local. We don't just pull from Dubuque or something like that. We pull from South Florida. They're our audience, basically. They're our listeners. They're South Florida sports fans. One of them is Courtney Harris, and he brought to us Christopher's Bakery, and I'm waiting for my delivery to come because I just ordered one of the vanilla wafer cakes this week. That is their signature item. Why is it called Christopher's Bakery? It is named after Courtney's brother who passed away from a seizure at just 11 years old. And so Christopher's Bakery has partnered with Miami Nicholas Children's Hospital and set up a fund where they donate a portion of the sales to epilepsy and neuroscience research, since that's where they spent much of his life. But you want to know more about the vanilla wafer cakes? I just got the one with chocolate chips on it. Again, my daughter and I are going to definitely enjoy this. They've got plenty of cake options available for shipping. They typically hand deliver. We know obviously we're in the middle of a crisis, so they're not doing that right now, but they will be delivered to your door here in South Florida. Here's the biggest thing. We've created a unique page for 5 Reasons. So go to Christopher's Bakery, CHRISTOPHERS bakery.com/5 reasons. Spell it out, FIVE reasons. Then enter the code 5 reasons, also spelled out, and you will get 15% off your order, every item in your order. So again, that's Christopher'sBakery.com/5 reasons. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here. I've got Alphonse Sidney. Happy birthday, Alf. I am.
Sir.
We missed you because you were on a variety of Zoom calls. How does one pass his birthday on a day that you can't actually see another human being?
Get drunk on Zoom.
Pretty much.
Basically.
And then what happened? Your dog ate a frog?
My dog, I was walking my dog at 3 o'clock in the morning because I'd been drinking all day, so I neglected her. So I was like, I got to take her for a walk. We get out there and she decides to bite down on a frog, one of those big bafo toads, whatever they call them. And I basically kicked the toad quickly, got it away from her, but she foamed a little bit. So I'd wash her mouth out with water, rush her to the vet at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a rough night, but she's fine.
Wow. All right.
So that was it was a good way to end the birthday.
Because you certainly want to be at a vet during social distancing. But I guess dogs can't get it, right? That's the deal. Dogs are you're still around people.
Exactly. Good thing it was empty. The vet isn't jumping at 3 o'clock in the morning. Not the way you think it'd be.
All right, let's get to today's episode. Again, check out all the other episodes. I did one with Alfredo Arteaga. It's kind of a Dolphins Heat crossover, 3 yards per carry, 5 on the floor episode about whether the Dolphins will ever be the Heat in this town. I'm going to get Alf's opinion on this before we finish up. But one thing I wanted to get into was I've mentioned on previous pods that there's all of these contests and lists being made because people are bored. All right. So one of them that Alex and I talked about on a pod was, this Wade versus Nowitzki thing. And then it's like Wade, Nowitzki, and Garnett, who had the best career, and all these other contests and whatever. So one of the ones that just came up and that Alex and I talked about was the 06 Heat versus the 09 Lakers. Somebody put that up, and of course most people, because they're more Laker fans, sort of bandwagonish Laker fans out there, the Lakers won, that on Twitter. But the other one was this piece that was written by Andy Bailey, whose work I'm familiar with. He does a good job. He does some interesting stuff. He does a lot of statistical stuff. He writes for Bleacher Report. And he put up a list of the top 10 starting lineups in, what was it, the last 20 years? Is that right?
Yeah, basically since 2000.
Okay, so basically this century, the last 20 years. So he put up the top 10 starting lineups. And there was some team missing. And
glaring omission.
And we're going to go through this because I know that Heat fans have kind of a persecution complex about this stuff. But I think in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, it's earned. Because I don't understand, and this is my basic point on this. The Miami Heat were the biggest team in the world, not just in basketball. They were the biggest team in the world. The team that affected the most social change. The team that ESPN sent 4 writers down to South Florida to create an index, okay, to follow them around. The teams whose training camp at a military base attracted 3,000 people. The team whose media day was so big they had to hold it at the Hex Center at UM. The team that had 25 different gates, okay, like Bump Gate and Cry Gate and Contraction Gate and Chill Gate and all these other gates, right?
Joel Anthony Gate.
Joel Anthony Gordon Gate. They had all these different gates, right? And every day, okay, it was a circus, right? Everybody was covering them. And not only that, but they affected social change. They were out front on Trayvon Martin. That song, the Horsetronaut thing. What I always forget the name.
Harlem Shake.
The Harlem Shake, right? Like all of a sudden, there's a video up that's better produced than anybody else that put one out anywhere. They were the biggest thing in the world.
Remember when the Eagles were going to be the Miami Heat of the NFL?
Yeah, they tried that for about a minute.
And it
right?
sucked.
And it sucked. Okay, so they were the biggest thing in the world, and now all of a sudden, none of it happened. And this has been a consistent pattern here where, Bill Simmons, did this, what was it, the series of podcasts about, great teams of this era and just left out that entire Heat era. Did he ever put it in? Because I don't remember it. I just remember
he did wasn't it like a series of pods and he just never even brought them up.
He never brought them up. Like they didn't exist. Like LeBron basically was in Cleveland and then he was in Cleveland. And
there's just 4 years missing.
Right. And the only championship that matters is the 2016 championship because poor, middle class, working class Cleveland needed a championship so damn bad. And he delivered it. So the 2 he delivered with the Heat didn't mean anything. And if anybody brings up the Heat, they just bring up the 2011 finals or the Ray Allen shot. That's basically what gets brought up now.
They're turning into Judy from Family Matters. I don't know if you get that reference.
I don't.
They just wrote Judy. They just wrote Judy off of the show.
She never came back.
Like she went upstairs one day and never came back, and no one ever talked about her again. So that's what they're doing. They're turning the Heat into Judy from the Family Matters.
All right, so we're Judy from Family Matters. I'm going to give you these are the best.
That should be the name of the episode, Judy from Family.
Judy
Matters.
from Family Matters. Here's the top 10 starting lineups of the last 20 years according to Andy Bailey. All right. Number 1, the 2017 through 19 Warriors. Number 2, the 16 through 18 Warriors, which I don't even understand because those two overlap. So I don't get it. He's talking about the pre-Durant and post-Durant, but doesn't he mean – he might have mistyped this. Doesn't he mean 16, 17, and then 17 through 19, I guess, because it can't be both. Number 3 was the Celtics from 07 to 10. And this one just cracks me up, okay?
The most overrated team.
They won 1 championship. I know they got to the finals twice. They won 1 championship, right? Okay, and Paul Pierce got carted off on a wheelchair, and Kendrick Perkins, suddenly is an authority on all things. They won 1 title. And I know it was it's a very good starting lineup, obviously. Okay, they have 3 future Hall of Famers, one of whom, by the way, played for the Heat not long after. 3 future Hall of Famers. Rajon Rondo, who to me is not a Hall of Famer, but was a very high-level player for them. And Kendrick Perkins, who sucks. But that's basically number 3. All right. Then they also had he has the Warriors from 14 to 16. So he's got 3 Warriors in the top 4.
The funny math that is being used to keep the Heat out of this top 10 is just hilarious. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, so then let's keep going. The Cavaliers from 15 to 17. Now, this one is offensive, okay, to me. How is it possible that the Heat are not on this list, but the Cavs, who in my view didn't have as great a LeBron as the Heat did, at least during the middle 2 years, okay, plus Kyrie, you can make an argument for Kyrie versus Wade, particularly the last, 2 years of Wade, right, during the Big Three era. Kevin Love, who you cannot make an argument for over Chris Bosh. J.R. Smith, who I'm sorry, you cannot make an argument for over Mario Chalmers. I'm sorry. I'd rather have Mario Chalmers. And then who's their fifth piece? Tristan Thompson was their fifth starter, or Mozgov? One of those two?
It would have to be, right?
Okay, and so who are we comparing that to? For the Heat, Battier, right? I mean, if you're going to say that.
But he listed Andy Bailey listed Haslam as a starter.
He was a starter for part of it. He was a starter for the 27-game winning streak. The starting line, UD was a starter for that. He was, if you remember, the 9-man rotation was pretty much set during that time, and Shane was coming off the bench. So Haslam was a starter for that. So, and Joel Anthony was a starter at times.
He's including 11, 12, and 12, 13. So the lineup changes. So this is what I don't understand. Lineup changes for other teams made them two separate teams, but lineup changes for the Heat basically just don't even go.
Well, he's saying they don't even belong here. And let's go to these other ones. So okay, so number 6, he split the Lakers, the Shaq Lakers, into 2000 and 2001 and 2001, 2002. What is the difference there? What did he have? Is it Glenn Rice? Is that the difference?
He said he has a couple. He says a pair of Shaq and Kobe lineups.
Okay, I'm looking at. All right, I'm calling it.
So he has Grant, Fox, O'Neal, Fisher, Bryant, and then he has Ori. So the difference is Ori and Grant is the difference.
So it's not even Rice, because Rice was okay. What year was Rice? He has. Let's see. I
think 02, 01, 02.
Okay, let me look at it. He's got a pair of Shaq Kobe lineups. He has Fisher, Kobe, Fox, Ori, and Shaquille. Again, Andy's a numbers guy, so he's doing this based on points per 100 possessions and net rating. Okay, and the second one you said Grant, that's Horace Grant, right? Okay, Horace Grant, Rick Fox. So basically Horace Grant versus Robert Horry. Am I missing? Was Rice there 99, 2000? That might have been it. Rice was there 99, 2000. Wasn't that team better?
I would think so, but if you the whole problem is you can't just go off of these numbers either. Right? That doesn't. I guess, I mean, if that's the basis, but he also had a fan vote in there. And that's what I'm saying, right? So Grant and Ori make a difference where you would have to put the two different Lakers lineups on the list in two separate spots, right? Mm-hmm. But Battier and Haslam don't make enough of a difference for the Heat to be two separate teams in this list. You understand how it makes?
Well, but here's the other thing that's ludicrous about it. And again, I don't want to pick on him, but like what's ludicrous about it. So the third best player for the Lakers, if you're to look at the 6 and 7, I mean, it's hard. J.R. Smith, I guess, was the fourth best player, or maybe Tristan was in those Cavs starting lineups. But literally, when you get past Shaq and Kobe, the third best player on those two teams, because you don't have Rice, was who? Derek Fisher, Fox, Ori,
Rick Fox. I don't know.
Or Grant. Well, Chris Bosh is better than all of them. Of course. By a lot, like all of them combined. So, like, what is that? Like, just because, again, is this because Dwyane wasn't Dwyane? That's the only thing I can think of. Okay, so then you go, okay, number 8, the Spurs, and the Spurs team they picked a 3-year pattern on that. Now, this is the other thing. Now, was their starting lineup the whole time Splitter, Duncan, Leonard, Green, and Parker? I don't feel like that was the lineup the entire time.
It wasn't, but that's what I'm saying. There's no rhyme or reason to this. The way that he split up the years and the different seasons, there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, I'm looking at. He says most games began with Parker, Green, Leonard, Duncan, and Splitter, and that is true. Most games did begin with them. I mean, Splitter was okay. He was not a bad defender. He didn't move his feet all that well, but obviously, look, Kawhi. As you're at that point, he kind of became, their co-best player. At some point, I think he overtook Parker as time went on. But, I mean, it's hard to argue with the Spurs. But, again, the Heat beat that team one of the 2 times, right? So, like, and I know they got slaughtered by him the second time. but they did beat them in 2012, 2013, which started that run. Now, the next one is a starting lineup that I actually think should be higher, to be honest, which is the Pistons starting lineup from 03, 04 to 05, 06, which, I mean, this starting lineup it just doesn't have like an elite guy, but it had a bunch of A- players, right? Like, I mean, Billups, Hamilton, which was one of the 2 or 3 best backcourts of its time, Tayshaun Prince, who was a very, very solid player, and then the 2 Wallaces. I mean, as far as a construction of a starting lineup, like that one to me would be way up there. And then number 10, he throws that Laker team in, which we talked about earlier, but the 09, 10 to 11, 12 Lakers team, which was Bynum, Gasol, I'm not going to call him world peace, Artest, Kobe, and Derek Fisher.
A team that also they won 2 titles, right?
They won 2 titles. They won 2 titles. They won back-to-back. But, okay, so, here's my argument on this. If you're just going based on the numbers, then I would have to look back and see what the Heat's starting lineup combinations had. I am guessing that the starting lineup that had Haslam during the 27-game winning streak was pretty damn good when they were on the floor together.
Right.
They won 27 straight games. They won 66 games, and that starting lineup was intact. 25 of those 27 games, they had the same lineup. I remember this distinctly because Dwyane missed 2 games, and Mike Miller, who was not part of the rotation during that whole time, was plugged in by Spo because Spo always reaches deep into the bench to pull out a guy, and they won those 2 games also. Dwyane was absolutely elite during those 27 games. He was terrific, but LeBron was otherworldly. It's the best LeBron has ever been, that 27-game winning streak. Look at LeBron's numbers during that streak, and they did not lose a game, okay? I don't understand. Just statistically, it doesn't make sense. But let's go beyond that, all right? If you're going to go past the stats and look at impact, you cannot I mean, is this just disrespect to Mario Chalmers? Like, how do you make a case that a starting lineup with LeBron, Dwyane, and Bosh, you can't have it both ways, Alf. You can't say that team was going to win 70 effing games every year and break basketball, and it was totally unfair, but it's not one of the 10 best starting lineups of the past 20 years because we're going to include 3 Warriors lineups, 3 Lakers lineups, okay, yes. and a Celtics lineup that won 1 championship together.
Well, okay, so if you're going to look at this thing as a totality, when you're looking at all these different teams, you would have to call it the 2010 to 2014 Miami Heat, right? To me, that's just what makes sense. And that team won 2 championships. So he's saying in his little breakdown, because he actually has the Heat at 12, and he's saying that they were just merely good in total plus minus and net rating. So that's what held them back. So that's the whole thing. So it doesn't matter what era they played in, what teams they were up against. I mean, the Cavs teams that were blowing through the East after LeBron left the Heat, I'm sure their plus minus and net rating was great because the East was terrible. And then the East was terrible a lot in the early 2000s as well. So you're putting all this into the numbers, but it just doesn't take into account how important and how good and how big those teams were. He only mentions 1 title, and the Heat team actually finished 5th in fan voting. Mm-hmm. So they were 5th in fan voting, and then he put all his arbitrary numbers in and pushed them all the way back to 12. Which is what I'm saying. All these numbers, the way he split these teams up, are completely arbitrary, and that's what if you add numbers in, it pushes the Heat out of the top 10, and it's like it's moving the goalpost, and you can't. And that's why, as a Heat fan, it feels purposeful, right? It doesn't feel like, oh, this was I just went strictly by the numbers, and this is where the Heat fell. It feels like you purposefully maneuvered these. Like I said, you moved the goalpost to the point that you could justify poorly having the Heat outside the top 10.
But he wouldn't be the first, and that's the larger point here. I don't want to. I enjoy a lot of Andy's work, and I don't want to pick on Andy. This is a trend. This is the way things are done. There's this pushback where anybody who is a Heat fan must have been a bandwagoner, right?
Yep. And
then if anybody protests, it's like, no, they weren't as good as you think they were, and they literally changed basketball. Okay. put the social impact stuff aside. Put the media crush aside. You can't, in my opinion, but put it aside. They literally changed the game. Positionless basketball, all right? Chris Bosh at the 5, Shane Battier at the 4. We can talk about Don Nelson doing some of this stuff and what the Warriors have done after, and Mike D'Antoni, okay? There's been a few innovators. The Heat did it at the highest level. Don Nelson's teams with Golden State never got to a finals, all right? D'Antoni's teams never got to a finals. They should have, but they didn't. And what the Warriors did afterwards borrowed a lot from what the Heat did. What the Heat did was revolutionary. What Spoelstra did was revolutionary. They basically figured out after going through Ilgauskas and Magloire and Dampier and Ronnie Turioff and Joel, although Joel was better suited for the modern game than those guys. Okay, after going through those guys, just decided, okay, we don't need any of that anymore. We're not going to do, okay, Dexter Pittman, you had your 6 minutes at Indiana, come to the bench. And they changed basketball. They literally changed it. Now, by necessity, yes, okay, they didn't have any other options at that point. But they changed it. They produced one of the most compelling final series in history. They beat an Oklahoma City team. I mean, I was half expecting Andy to put on there the Oklahoma City team that lost to the Heat in 5 games, because
I mean they're in the top 15.
Right. Well, and they don't even have Harden in there because Harden was not a starter, right? Does he have him in as a, because he was not a starter on the finals team. Cephalosha was. He wasn't starting Harden that year. Harden was the 6th man of the year.
I don't know if he put him as a starter.
No, he couldn't have, because Harden never started there.
No,
I mean, he started.
He
games,
has Durant,
he
Westbrook, Ibaka, Roberson, Adams.
Roberson and Adams.
So he went. No, he doesn't even have that Thunder team. He has a 2014, 15, 15, 16 Thunder team.
So right, because the finals team was 11-12, and the finals team had Cephalosha and Perkins. Not. So he
actually didn't even. That team isn't even in the top 15.
Okay. All right. So I don't want to waste that much time on this specifically. To me, this is another in an endless stream of slights to write the Heat out of the record books. And I'm looking at this too. Somebody posted this today, and I always have regret that I never did it. And then obviously life goes sideways, and you just, I don't even have my notes anymore, unfortunately. But nobody wrote the Big 3 book. It never got written. All right. I mean, I collected stuff for years. I had stuff in my head. I actually thought about putting out a book just called Tweet the Heat. And it was just going to be a collection of the best tweets from the Heat era to kind of capture them in the social media age. They came a lot. I mean, Twitter basically launched in 08-09, right? Like right before the Big 3. Like LeBron's decision blew up Twitter that night. Like they coincided with the social media, Twitter in particular, real-time, tweet every play of every game, every emotion, revolution. The Heat were that team. They're the team that should always be associated with that. Like they would not have been as big 20 years before, and because they didn't have it, and Twitter would not have been as big without them. And I always wanted to just write it in a social media way. I never did it. Nobody else ever did it. I think Dan thought about doing it. I know Rick Bucher was working on a book about the decision forever. I don't think it ever came out. And now we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the decision. And I really want to do a bunch of episodes leading up to it, Alf, if we can. I think, we got the 10-year anniversaries coming up in like 3 months. And that just to give something away. But I just saw a Warriors book just came out. I think Ethan Strauss, who's excellent, wrote it about kind of the breakup of the Warriors dynasty. People were saying, well, nobody ever did one on the Heat. So maybe that's our fault as writers that we didn't do it. But I feel like there's been more attention given to the Warriors when the Heat, the Heat, in my view, were more overall impactful than the Warriors. Maybe not as great, maybe didn't sustain it as long, but I think made more of a social, cultural impact than the Warriors did.
They absolutely did. And when you talk about Twitter, the reason I joined Twitter was to follow guys like Wojnarowski and, Bucher, all these Stephen A. Smith, all these guys trying to find out who was, where all the free agents were going that summer. And that's the reason I'm on Twitter. And I think a lot of people, I think that is when the transaction became bigger than the game that summer. And I think that's when NBA Twitter really started, because that was that turned into the fastest way to get once you realize that your friends on Twitter were getting, in today's day and age, I got to get onto social media so I can be up to date on this stuff. And that started with LeBron coming to the Heat, and it just lasted the entire time. I remember Ray Allen having dinner with what was it, Pat and Spo, and people sneaking pictures and sending it out on Twitter. When LeBron left, how crazy Twitter was with all the rumors, trying to track Dan Gilbert's plane, and he was lying about being in his backyard.
Alf, the Ray Allen thing I remember well because you probably know this. Dono and I went to the wrong restaurant. I mean, we found out from Twitter that we were at the wrong restaurant because George had gotten wind that he was going to be at Prime 112, right? And that's the natural assumption, or Prime Italian. So George and I, based on stuff we'd seen on Twitter, but also some additional spy reports, George is like, meet me down at Prime Italian. So we sat out front, ordered some meatballs, and waited for Ray for 3 hours. And while we're sitting there on Twitter, we notice, oh, no, he's eating downtown with the Heat. And some high school kid basically snapped a picture of him, and so we promoted him. But, yeah, you're right. All of that stuff was on Twitter. Everything was immediate. I mean, even other stuff that I was present for, the Pat Riley shut the bleep up and manage your own damn team, was basically – right after the 27-game winning streak, we're in New Orleans, and, Danny Ainge had come out criticizing LeBron because LeBron was complaining about some hard fouls from Kirk Heinrich and the loss to the Bulls. And there were only 4 of us that made the trip to New Orleans, and we're outside the locker room, and Tim Donovan, Heat's VP of Media Relations, comes out and looks at us and goes, I have a statement for Pat. Okay. This is for Daddy Ainge. Shut the fuck up and manage your own team. And I was we all looked at him like, I think it was me, Ira, probably Joe, and I'm not sure who the fourth was. Might have been Windhorst or Wallace. We looked at him like, really? And I was so flustered that the first thing I did was tweet it, and I tweeted coach your own team instead of manage your own team, and we had to take it back. And then to show you how it was a social media age, when we walked, so then they let us into the locker room, and there's LeBron sprawled out on the floor with Mike Mancias working on him, which was typically what he did, small locker room, visiting locker room in New Orleans. He's scrolling through Twitter. We're standing behind him. We can see our faces pop up on his Twitter scroll, and he's smiling. Okay? That's what the Big Three era was about. Everything was immediate. Everything was out there. It was like, it's just like Trump with Twitter now, where he knows he's going to get a reaction. LeBron knew that too. And so this, the larger point is the Heat, everything about the NBA is now social media. All right. The NBA kills the NFL in social media, just kills it. Okay. That is where the NBA lives, on video, on social media, and all the rest of it, with its personalities, with the contests, with the polls, with the debates, and all that stuff. That is what wherever the NBA lives. But that Heat team coincided with it. So if you're going to deny their greatness from a basketball perspective, which I think is ridiculous, okay, you cannot deny their overall impact. And I feel, and this is not about Andy Bailey, this is about Bill Simmons, this is about some of the others who, it's like they devoted their entire existence, the Stephen A's of the world and everybody else, the Colin Cowards, to the Miami Heat for 4 years. And it's like, oh, LeBron's gone, the Heat don't matter anymore. And not only that, the era doesn't matter. And the only championship that matters is 16 with the Cavs. And the only team that matters in the decade is the Warriors, or if the Lakers are good again, or wherever LeBron goes now. That's it.
And some
infuriating.
Some of it is just, it's also clickbait. They know leaving the Heat off this list was going to cause controversy, and it's almost like they to this day they want to poke that team and poke Heat fans, and then you wonder why Heat fans feel persecuted all the time and why they feel like nobody likes their team, and there's something to that. They know leaving that, they're putting the Cavs team and not putting the Heat team on that list, they know it's going to get a reaction. I mean, every reply to that tweet from Bleacher Report is either a Camby or somebody asking why did they leave out the Big Three Heat. I mean, you're even non-Heat fans. Every NBA fan is like, how did you leave out the Big Three Heat? There's even people saying, I hated that team, but there's no way you leave them off the top 10 list. So part of it is just it's still continuing to troll Heat fans and the Heat as a team and an organization. I don't know, and I think we've had our theories on why people don't like Miami and the Miami Heat. It has to do with the amount of brown people down here. But I don't know what else there could be, but there's like a blatant disrespect there for this organization.
Well, look, the opposite of hate is indifference, right? Nobody was indifferent of that team. Nobody was indifferent. So this, let's get away from Andy Bailey because he's doing a statistical comparison I don't agree with, but I'm talking about the larger narrative. All right.
Well, I'm saying in the larger narrative, there's a lot of clickbait. It's a lot of clickbait and trolling.
A lot of it is. But I'm just saying in general, this you cannot go from hating a team because they were so relevant, so revolutionary, and so good, but all of those things, right? So unfair. That's the word that was used all the time. Unfair, okay? I mean, as if Durant going to the Warriors after 73 wins wasn't unfair. Okay, unfair. I mean, look, LeBron and Bosh joined a team that went out in the first round of the playoffs and had one star, all right, and had to clear out the whole rest of the roster. But you went from saying they were unfair and everybody caring about every single thing they did and the hotels on the road, which I would see the fans lined up for them, to then all of a sudden the era didn't even exist. All that mattered is what LeBron did with the Cavs. What? That's the part of it. So we're getting beyond Andy Bailey, but to me, that's the larger issue. All right, we're going to talk about, so there's one other issue we want to get to this week. Before we do, a word from another of our sponsors. Actually, after reading all the stuff about the Heat, you're going to need this sponsor.
All right, guys, before we get back to the show, I want to welcome everybody to our newest sponsor, Apollo Leaf. Okay? Apollo Leaf provides top-of-the-line premium CBD extracted and then formulated for maximum benefit. Apollo Leaf offers unique products like their sleep sprays and energy sprays, which are especially useful for this current turbulent time, right? People ask me all the time, Alf, why CBD? Well, CBD benefits include anxiety reduction, increased focus, sleep assistance, pain relief, and more. Apollo Leaf is based out of Miami, so they're local, and they only source ingredients from top farms in the USA. Apollo Leaf uses broad-spectrum CBD that includes all the benefits of the cannabis plant, but removes all the THC. So go now to www.apolloleaf.com and use code HEAT at checkout for 25% off your first order. That's right, guys. The code HEAT, H-E-A-T, your favorite basketball team, and that's 25% off at apolloleaf.com. A-P-O-L-L-O leaf.com. Now back to the episode.
All right, let's get back to one other thing. There was one topic I wanted to get to with you here quickly, Alf. Kendrick Nunn came out. We were, I think, at times a little hard on Kendrick this year, and then had to pull ourselves back and be like, wow, he's really accomplished something. We took him for granted so quickly because he was so good so early, going from a guy who wasn't even a guarantee to make the roster to somebody who's starting and then averaging 16 points a game, that I think we nitpicked him a lot, maybe more so than other players, maybe unfairly. I think if you look at his numbers and Tyler Hero's numbers, we probably inflated what Tyler did a little bit and probably downplayed what Kendrick did a little bit, I think, to be fair. Although I think both you and I tried to rein ourselves in with that and then present it when Kendrick would sort of hit a wall but then scale the wall a little bit later and find his game a little bit. But he came out and very openly said, I should be Rookie of the Year, not Ja Morant. And I think most NBA fans around the country reacted to that with kind of a smirk because Morant was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. The Grizzlies way exceeded expectations to be the 8th seed when everything stopped. They were over 500. And Morant, has the highlight plays, the dunks over people or the attempted dunks over people. And so if it wasn't going to be Zion this year, it was going to be Morant. What were your thoughts on it? And does Kendrick have a case? Because by the numbers are not all that off, and the Heat were better than the Grizzlies this year.
I mean, on its face, it felt ridiculous. Even though, I think Kendrick's in the top 3. I mean, without a doubt, and he's probably number 2. So it shouldn't feel that ridiculous, but I felt like Ja Morant had it was starting to just run away with it. But then when you look at the numbers, 17-7-3 versus 16-3-3, Ja Morant shooting 49%, Kendrick shooting 45%. They're both shooting the same from 3. Kendrick on a higher volume, and Kendrick's beating him in free throw percentage, 84-77. And then when you look, Kendrick's on a starter on a 4 seed, Ja Morant's a starter on an 8 seed. Now, how much when it comes to Rookie of the Year, a lot of time winning isn't really a barometer because the best rookie normally ends up on a really, really, really bad team.
Right.
So normally the Rookie of the Year is on a team that doesn't make the playoffs. So I don't know how much you can put winning into it because Kendrick is just surrounded by better players. But the fact that he's able to do this as maybe the third option, would you call him a third option?
I mean, I some nights he was higher than that. I mean, some nights he was carrying them offensively. Who is their first option? I mean, we say Jimmy, but there were some nights Jimmy took 8 shots. Like Bam. All year we complained about him not being as aggressive as he should be.
I mean, the most aggressive scorer in the starting
is Duncan Robinson.
It's Kendrick Nunn.
Or Duncan. I mean,
Duncan,
those became their 2 scorers, and then Tyler and Goran, really. I mean, the Heat, there were some nights Goran was their most aggressive offensive player. Like, I think unlike all the other, pretty much every team in the league, you could really make an argument on any given night that any of 6 guys might be the Heat's most aggressive offensive player. And a lot of nights, particularly early in the season, and especially after he got through that stretch, which coincided with the Achilles problem before the break. And then when I was up in Chicago and he just looked different in the Rising Stars game, it looked like he was over it. And then he came out of the break playing great. He played terrific for those 2 weeks right out of the break.
Yeah, he was playing really well and doing a lot more things than just scoring. He was doing the other things really well.
But I think a lot of this is one. I would give it to Morant, okay, just to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of this is name recognition, which Morant was a star, even if it was for 1 year in college. He was a known quantity coming into the draft. He was the number 2 overall pick versus undrafted. Some of it is age. We've seen sometimes in the Rookie of the Year voting that a nod will be given to the younger player. That's kind of worked against Kendrick a lot this year because everybody's like, he's a rookie, but he's 24, right? Like, it's like when Chris Wenke was a rookie at 28. Like, he's an older rookie. I think that hurts him. I think also what also hurts him is that I think if you ask most Heat fans who was the best rookie on the team this year, a lot of them would say Hero, even though the numbers really don't say that. They would be wrong. I think we all agree, everybody on this podcast, that Hero's upside is significantly higher. And in part because he's still 4 years younger than Nunn is. He's 20 as opposed to 24. But I don't know that you could say he was better than Nunn this year. I mean, for the complaints we've had about Nunn's defense at times, Hero's defense, I mean, he played with effort and he was positioned correctly, but you wouldn't call him a plus defender at this point. He had big moments late in games, but so did Kendrick, actually, when he got those opportunities. Not as many as Hero, but he had some. I don't think it's fair to dismiss it because he's 24, but I also think that the nod goes to Morant because he's doing it at his age. And let's be honest, the Grizzlies were a huge surprise. I mean, they were one of the 2 or 3 biggest surprises in the league. Like, Andre Iguodala didn't want to play for that team because that team was supposed to be so awful. And to be in an 8 seed, the West is not what the West was, but to be an 8 seed in the West ahead of some teams that were supposed to be better is impressive when there's no vets on that team. I mean, it's him and Jaren Jackson Jr. And I mean, I like their future a lot, but they're kind of a couple years ahead of schedule, similarly to the Heat. But in the Heat, Nunn has Butler. Nunn has another all-star in Adebayo. Nunn has Goran Dragic. It's a little bit of a different deal. So I would give it to Morant for sure, but and that was my pick before the season was Morant. But I think the fact that we're even having this conversation reflects really well on Kendrick Nunn, and I have no problem with him expressing that opinion. If he believes that, he should say it. That's the way I want guys to be. Hero, we talk about his confidence all the time and his drip. Why can't Kendrick Nunn have some? Jimmy has it, right? We want Bam to have it. Right?
That's one of the other things about it is that we just haven't heard a lot from Nunn. And like for this to be like his national headline grabbing quote, the first one, I think that's what kind of jarred people as well. Maybe if people heard him talk more throughout the year and kind of got to know him a little bit better, it wouldn't have came out of nowhere. But I think a lot of, especially casual NBA fans, don't even know who Kendrick Nunn is. And he is going to be second. I think he's going to be second in Rookie of the Year voting.
I think he'll be third. I think Zion will be second.
That's such a joke. To me, that's
but I think he'll be second because of the name recognition.
All right. Well, he's going to be top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting. So
he should be. I mean, he should definitely be ahead of RJ Barrett. He should be ahead of Cam Reddish. He should be ahead of
Brandon
Clark. Brandon Clark has a K. I mean, that's the other thing. Memphis struck it pretty rich there. I know our guy Nikias loves Brandon Clark. You can make a case for Brandon Clark too, but I do think he'll probably be third. you haven't heard from Kendrick for a couple of reasons. All right. One of which, and I've talked to Kendrick some, and I like Kendrick. But
we talked to him media day.
We talked to him media day, and we liked him there too. I thought he was a little bit more open there than he's been in some other settings. He had the situation in college. He doesn't like to talk about it. I don't think anybody's talked to him about it since Chandel did, to be honest. So the Heat has really put him out there in a lot of one-on-one situations with people. I can tell you that I had a bunch of conversations with him. He's very polished. He's very respectful of his teammates in particular. He doesn't say a whole lot. But he's not a bad interview in any sense, and you can talk basketball with him. So I mean, to me, he's again, we can talk about what the issues were, the issues weren't, but to me, he's likable and I think he presents himself well. But he's not a me guy. That's not his personality. I can tell you that. I mean, Hero exudes more of that. Obviously, Jimmy exudes more of that. And there are other guys in the team who do, and he doesn't. But I think it's good. I think we should hear more from Kendrick Nunn. I think we've kind of moved into this space where he was, like I said, this great story, and then it's okay. He's the piece they can trade. Maybe not. Maybe not. Now I've said on previous podcasts that the team values Duncan Robinson more. That's the guy that they'll ultimately take care of because it's more of a unique skill set, and it's a player that they developed from the beginning, whereas Kendrick's somebody they poached. But it doesn't mean they don't like Kendrick Nunn, and it doesn't mean what he has done has not been significant. So anyway, check out our website, 5reasonsports.com. Also, if you got any legal issues, you can contact the Seltzer-Mayberg Law Firm at onecalllegal.com. Spell it out, O-N-E, calllegal.com. They still have someone there 24 hours a day, and all of their attorneys are working, even if they're not in the office right now. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.